Adam Smith would be turning over in his grave right now because he spent a decade of his life writing The Wealth of Nations, which is basically a treatise against protectionist trade policy. He was against restrictions like tariffs because he argued that number one, they increased prices for consumers, number two, they incited unnecessary trade wars, and number three, they were forcing other countries to buy from us when they made the economically rational decision to buy from cheaper sources, shrinking the size of the total market that could be consuming your goods. Adam Smith was living in the 1700s in Scotland. The prevailing economic doctrine was called mercantilism, and it was based on this faulty premise that nations prosper by hoarding gold and silver, and to do that you need to export more than you import, and tariffs were one way to force that trade surplus. Smith does not mince words about this. He says this fixation on the balance of trade is embarrassing and fruitless, and he says that often it's fueled by national animosities against other nations. Of course, I'm not suggesting that we base our economic policy off the writings of a Scottish philosopher who lived in the 1700s, but I do think that the underlying first principles approach that he laid out in The Wealth of Nations is actually still instructive. He teaches us to ask three questions. Number one, what is the actual goal here, right? Is the goal to have a trade surplus? Or is it to be prosperous as a nation? If it's the first one, we shouldn't confuse the means for the ends. Number two, who is this serving and who is it not serving? Smith was adamant that monopolists and crony capitalists were always lobbying to pass legislation that would favor them at the expense of everybody else, and he cautioned against that. Thirdly, is there a more efficient, effective, and just way to get at the same goal? While he does specify that sometimes there are exceptions to his no tariff rule, for example, in the case of protecting your defense-related industries, or sometimes in selective cases as a retaliatory measure, overall he was much more adamant about the distortionary effects, and he probably would be skeptical of the crude and sweeping formula that is at the heart of the current implementation of tariffs, which really are not so much reciprocal tariffs as they are tariffs punishing countries for buying more from us than we buy from them, without a whole lot of granular attention to detail. It's really impossible to know what the ultimate outcomes of these policies will be because they depend on so many different variables, as this Ray Dalio article I thought pointed out really well. But at the end of the day, the father of capitalism likely would have warned us against aggressive and antagonizing economic policies that would lead to second and third order effects that are highly risky.